Chapter 183. Binding Island. As the beat fell, it seemed to affect the sea. The sea suddenly churned and the waves in the surroundings rose into a tsunami. It was like a giant hidden at the bottom of the sea had lifted its large hands and grabbed at the Merfolk Islands. However, a huge light screen suddenly appeared on the Merfolk Islands. This light screen was none other than the Merfolk race's protective array. Its might was astonishing. At this moment, with the full-powered activation, it immediately slowed down the speed of the black pearl falling from the sky. However, the black bead's pressure was so strong that it caused the protective array to fluctuate intensely. The waves of the tsunami in the surroundings were stopped by the protective array. Booming sounds echo and a furious roar rang out from Image Island, one of the 4 islands. 7 Blood Eyes, what are you trying to do? As the roar shook the sky, a huge face appeared. This face was illusory and rose from the island. It grew larger and larger until it was comparable to an island. It was the face of an old man with a beard. His eyes were filled with shock as he glared angrily at the figure on the wyvern. However, the instant he let out a furious roar. On the 4 islands of the Merfolk race, many of the array cores of the protective array collapsed from the inside and exploded. Someone seemed to have tampered with the array cores that numbered more than 40 long ago. The hidden mechanism was activated at that moment and instantly destroyed the cores. In addition, a powerful fluctuation appeared on each of the 4 islands. The 7 Blood Eyes had been preparing to destroy the Merfolk race for a long time. They had already infiltrated the Merfolk race deeply and understood them inside out. Since they dared to invade now, they clearly had absolute confidence. As the expression of the Merfolk old man changed drastically, the black bead in the air suddenly shone with a black light. This light grew brighter and finally transformed into a huge palm that seemed to blot out the sky. It carried countless purple lightning as it slammed down on the face below and the protective array it was in. A huge explosion spread in all directions. The first thing that couldn't withstand it was the Merfolk race's array formation. It rapidly caved in and finally collapsed, revealing a huge palm-shaped gap. Countless purple lightning bolts rapidly spread along the edges of the protective array. Wherever they passed, the array formation would completely collapse. The entire process only lasted for more than 10 breaths of time. The Merfolk's protective array collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The backlash caused many areas on the 4 islands to explode into dust. After the palm print collapsed the array formation, it grew larger and larger, suppressing the illusory face formed by the Merfolk old man and smashing it onto an island. This island was Image. A huge palm print appeared in the center of the isle and that was clearly visible from the sky. The surroundings of the palm print were filled with destroyed buildings and flesh and blood. However, at the center of the palm print was a tower, which wasn't completely destroyed but there were huge cracks on it. This tower was like a temple built from white bones. It looked majestic but also extremely gloomy, and it gave off a feeling of grief and anger. This was because the material that was used to build this tower was countless bones, and they were all of humans. From the spirit energy left in the bones, these bones mostly belonged to the disciples of the 7 Blood Eyes. The Merfolk old man whose illusory face had appeared in the air earlier was rapidly flying out of this tower. On the way, he spat out a mouthful of blood and his expression was extremely ugly. He looked at the sky and rushed over, wanting to counterattack. In the palace on the wyvern's body, the figure standing there looked at the tower on the Image Island. His cold voice spread everywhere. Merfolk race, all these years, my 7 Blood Eyes has treated your race well. After your race became our sect's allied, our sect provided great assistance in terms of resources many times. 23 years ago, your race encountered a calamity of anomalous substances and our sect did our best to help. We provided countless resources and their value is at least 100 million spirit stones. 16 years ago, your race was attacked by the spirit wither race and was in danger of being exterminated. No race came to save you, but I personally led the disciples to help you. Many of the disciples were sacrificed to resolve the crisis of your race. At that time, countless members of your race requested for my sect's sacrificed disciples to be buried here to prove our friendship. These sacrificed disciples should have been revered by your race. But in order to curry favor with the Sea Corpse race, your race dug out their corpses to build a tower as a tribute. You repaid our kindness with ingratitude. If I don't destroy your race today, the world won't tolerate it. As he spoke, this figure took a step forward and stood in the air. It was the Seventh Peak's Peak Lord, Old Master Seventh. He wore a purple doused robe and his eyes seemed to contain lightning. He did not look angry, but he let out an oppressive aura. The words he said resounded through the clouds. He sent another palm strike toward the Murphic ancestor who had rushed out of Image Island. After that, he flicked his sleeve and pointed his left hand at the void to the left. The Murphic ancestor below was suppressed immediately. Countless water droplets appeared in the surroundings and enveloped him, turning into a huge water pearl. The Murphic ancestor wanted to struggle, but was unable to break free. His expression was distorted as he let out a deep roar. Jun Kai, stop talking about useless things. So what if we dug them out? The Sea Corpse race is protecting our Murphic race now, and they are already on their way. I'll wait. Old Master Seventh calmly spoke and looked at the void where he had pointed. That place distorted and another figure appeared. It wasn't a Murphic but a middle-aged cultivator who looked like a human. He wore black armor and his aura was strong, but he emitted an intense intent to die. From the visible parts of his body, it could be seen that he suffered skin necrosis, and one could even see some maggots crawling around in his skin. It was as though he was a corpse to begin with. This person had clearly been hiding to launch a sneak attack. Now that he was discovered, he could not counterattack even if he wanted to. He was instantly sealed into water droplets by the countless water droplets that appeared in the surroundings and floated in the air along with the Murphic ancestor. After sealing these two, Old Master Seventh ignored them and pointed at the Murphic Islands below. Immediately, the wyvern roared and rows of astonishing magic tools appeared on its back, emitting torrential spells that headed straight for the islands. At the same time, in the purple sea in the sky, more figures appeared. They were none other than the foundation building cultivators of the Seventh Peak of the Seven Blood Eyes. Accompanying them were incomparably astonishing magic ships. These magic ships were of different sizes, but each of them had an astonishing aura. They appeared in unison and lined up in the sky. Their magic power was circulated to the extreme, and they all bombarded the islands below. The spell powers of the foundation building magic bows seemed to have transformed into more than 100 spears that represented death. At the same time, 13 even more exaggeratedly huge magic warships that were 7,000 to 8,000 feet long squeezed out of the void and directly covered the islands. Amidst the rumbling, the islands trembled intensely. The target of the Seven Blood Eyes, this time, was none other than all the magic tools on the islands and the core formation cultivators. At the next instant, the countless magic tools on the islands all collapsed. All the core formation cultivators had nowhere to hide and were locked onto. They were forced out by the spell and suppressed one by one in the air. At that moment, there were no more core formation cultivators on the Murphic Islands. After doing this, Old Master Seventh waved his hand and the sea of purple light in the sky suddenly sank and directly enveloped the islands of the Murphic race, forming the sky-cutting formation and suppression. Wails rang out from the array formation and all the Murphic cultivators spat out blood. Among them, condensation cultivators were still alright, but the cultivation of foundation building cultivators was actually suppressed. All of them fell a major realm and were suppressed to the perfected condensation realm. On the forbidden sea outside the islands of the Murphic race, purple lights flashed as the figures of the Seven Peaks disciples appeared one after another. They were not surprised when they saw that they were above the forbidden sea. Instead, they immediately took out their magic boats and fell into the sea one after another. Xu Qing was among them. At this moment, Old Master Seventh, who was in the sky, calmly spoke. The Seventh Peak's grand competition has begun. Volve Cubs, you can enter now. Many races are watching this grand competition. Kill them well and showcase the elegant demeanor of my Seven Blood Eyes. He flicked his sleeve and a storm instantly blew over from the surrounding sea, speeding up the disciples' magic boats. They were like sharp blades that stabbed toward the Murphic Islands. In an instant, these 4,000 to 5,000 disciples borrowed the power of the storm to lock onto their respective targets and rushed toward different islands. Xu Qing looked at the large number of magic ships with terrifying auras in the sky in shock, and then at the ruined islands covered in purple light in front of him. His mind was shaken. To him, it was just an instant of teleportation. However, he didn't expect that when he arrived, the outcome of the battle seemed to have already been decided. It was indeed as the captain had said earlier. The true major things were settled by those people on the mountain. To Piedmont disciples, like him, the main point of this competition was to get rich. Of course, the prerequisite was that they could survive. A sharp glint flashed in Xu Qing's eyes. He had already made a decision earlier. At this moment, he adjusted the direction of the magic bow and rushed toward Binding Island. His target was the foundation-building holy item and the foundation-building pills on Binding Island. Although the effect of the former was ordinary, he also wanted to sell them for 500,000 spirit stones. There were many disciples who had the same thoughts as him, and most of them were at the upper levels of Che condensation. When observed from above, more than 1,000 magic boats were heading to Binding Island. There were even speed-type magic boats that had already landed on the island. Xu Qing wasn't slow by much. Very soon, he approached the shore. He put away the magic boat and leapt up. After he got ashore, he headed straight for the jungle ahead. Just as he was about to get close, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He instantly sped up and dodged the arrows formed by spales flying out of the jungle before charging over. In the jungle, some Merfa cultivators saw Xu Qing's arrival. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they let out low roars. Xu Qing didn't slow down and directly headed toward them. As he brandished his dagger, head started flying up. After killing 3 people in a row, Xu Qing suddenly jumped back and slashed behind him. Blood spurted out. The stomach of a vicious-looking Merfa cultivator, who was about to launch a sneak attack, was cut open. At the same time, the other Merfa cultivators in the surroundings all rushed toward him with malevolence and bloodthirst. Xu Qing narrowed his eyes. Although he loathed the Merfolk race, his goal in coming here this time was to snatch the foundation-building holy item, and not to waste time in meaningless fights, so he tried to leave. However, Merfolk cultivators appeared in front of him. They formed an encirclement with the Merfolk race at the back. Xu Qing knew that he would not be able to leave, so he simply rushed over. A while later, his figure walked out of the battlefield. As the blood on the dagger in his hand dripped with the wind, he sped deeper into the jungle. At this moment, on the 4 Merfolk Islands, the battle between the Seventh Peak's disciples and the Merfolk cultivators was erupting in many areas. The battles became increasingly intense,